The Magna Charter. Marriott. Edgar. I'll tell of the Magna Charter as were signed at the Baron's command, on Runningmead Island in middle of Thethems by King John, as were known as Lackland. Some say it were wrong of the barons their will on the king so to thrust, but you'll see if you look at both sides of the case that they had to do something or bust. For John, from the moment they crowned him, started acting so cunning and sly. Being king, of course, he couldn't do wrong, but, by gum, he'd a proper good try. He squandered the ratepayers' money, all their cattle and corn he did take till there wasn't a morsel of bread in the land, and the folk had to manage with cake. The way he behaved to young Arthur went to show as his feelings were bad. He tried to get Hubert to poke out his eyes, which is no way to treat a young lad. It were all right as being a tyrant to vassals and folk of that class, but he tried on his tricks with the barons and all, and that's where he made a faux pas. He started bombarding their castles, and burning them over their heads till there wasn't enough castles left to go round, and they had to sleep 6 in a bed. So they went to the king in a body, and their spokesman Fitzwalter by name, he opened the hole in his helmet and said, conciliatory like, ampersand quo. What's the game and quo? The king starts to shilly and shally, he sits and he haws and he hums, till the barons in rage started gnashing their teeth, and them with no teeth gnashed their gums. Said Fitz, though the hole in his helmet ampersand quo. It was you as put us in this plight and quo. And the king, having nothing to say to this murmured and quo. Leave your address and I'll write and quo. This angered the gallant Fitzwalter. He stamped on the floor with his foot, and were starting to give John a rare ticking off, when the hole in his helmet fell shut. Ampersand quo. We'll get him a Magna Charter and quo. Said Fitz when his face he had freed, said the barons and quo. That's right, and if one's not enough, get a couple and happen it'll breed and quo. So they set about making a charter. When at finish they'd got it all drawn up, it looked like a paper on cattle disease, or the entries for next year's World Cup. Next day, King John, unsuspecting, and having the afternoon free, to Runningmead Island had taken a boat, and were having some shrimps for his tea. He had just pulled the head off a big un, and were pinching its tail with his thumb, when up came a barge load of barons, who said, ampersand quo. We thought you'd be here, so we've come. When they told him they'd brought Magna Charter, the king seemed to go kind of limp, but minding his manners he took off his hat, and said, ampersand quo. Thanks very much, have a shrimp and quo. Ampersand quo. You'd best sign at once, ampersand quo. Said Fitzwalter, ampersand quo. If you don't I'll tell thee for a start, the next coronation will happen quite soon, and you won't be there to take part and quo. So they spread charter out on table, and John signed his name like a lamb. His writing in places was sticky and thick through dipping his pen in the jam. And it's through that their Magna Charter, as were signed by the barons of old, that in England today we can do what we like, just so long as we do what we're told.